And I'm really excited about this, as I've said before. I love the concept of looking at spaces and places that you wouldn't otherwise think of as related to your music strategy, music program. It was a whole piece in our report, our original report, so we just think space and place are really important, and there are some really neat ways to activate them and use those. And so I'm really thrilled that we have this great panel. I'm going to introduce Farzaneh from the U of T, who comes to us with some really interesting academic backgrounds of her own and fields of study. I'm not sure she's going to talk about them all, but so you might want to chat to her about that later. But let's give a hand for our last panel of the day.
Thanks so much, and thanks to everybody for coming. It's really an honor to be involved in this fascinating gathering. So our panel today is Making Space in the Public Realm, How Public Spaces Can Contribute to Scenes and Strategies. We're going to hear from a variety of presenters who are using, existing, and creating new spaces for the public presentation of music and engagement with their local communities in ways that I think are going to be really exciting, in particular to their own situations, and in many cases transferable to others as well. Because we're really dealing with space and place, I wanted to be sure that we had the land acknowledgement in place before we get going. So I want to acknowledge that this land on which the Sheraton Hotel stands has been the site of human activity for 15,000 years. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississauga of the Credit River. The territory was the subject of the Dish-Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement with the Iroquois Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community and on this territory. So, without further ado, I'm going to pretty much stay out of the way of the panelists here today. So we're going to start with, in the order that you see on the screen. I think everybody's sitting underneath their pictures, so it's very convenient. So we'll have Catherine Planet from Montreal of La Chasse-Balcon, Don Ibey, who is going to be speaking with us about programs at the Vancouver Public Library, Ismael Guerrero, who is at the Denver Housing Authority, and who's going to be talking about youth on record there within the space, and Tom Mara, who's at KEXP in Seattle, talking about radio and Community Arts Center. So they're each going to take a few minutes to just go ahead and tell us about their programs, and then we'll begin the larger conversation. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for inviting me and to talk about the public spaces for culture in Montreal and about La Chasse-Balcon. I have a little video. I don't know if we can watch it now, so it will explain. Thank you. So as you saw, La Chasse-Balcon is a series of shows that we're doing on balconies. La Chasse-Balcon, the name comes from an old Quebecois legend that is called La Chasse-Galerie. Maybe some of you saw the image of a canoe, a flying canoe. Anyways, it's a part of our culture and history. And so I used it, galerie meaning a porch, so I transformed it into La Chasse-Balcon, which is a balcony. So it's also a balcony hunt because we don't tell where the balcony is. People have to go on the website and on the Facebook page to see the clues, and the clues are history clues or things that make people question themselves about the quarter, the district, the area where it's happening. So what else? Oh yeah, I created La Chasse-Balcon because I used to live 4 years in Louisiana, and I was studying over there, doing a master studies, and I was observing how, first of all, I'm an artist, I'm a musician. That's the first thing that makes me my first project, objective, so excuse my English. And so I was studying over there, and I was observing how the traditional music would participate into creating links between people and putting them together. So I was questioning myself, is this happening in Quebec, in Montreal? And I realized that traditional music is it's a part of collectivity, identity. As for an individual who is happy who recognizes its identity, who can celebrate it, that person individually will be more open to talk to others instead of being like shy and like be competitive or jealous or envious. And so someone who's like happy, celebrating who they are, they're more open to the other. So I was like, that's the same thing for the collectivity. So that's why I wanted to use something that is a part of identity, and I went with the sound, the music. So it brings people together because it's a common link between a lot of people that are in the public. But not only that, some people doesn't have that sound as part of their identity because Montreal is multicultural. We have people from everywhere. But it's the effect of people celebrating themselves. When you see that from outside, you just want you want to be a part of that. And then after you want to add your own colors. It's not something you want to do. It's gonna happen naturally. So that's why I put on La Chasse-Balcon. Also, a balcony for me is a strong image of a link, a bridge between the private space and the public space. For me, like someone who stands on a balcony is showing their pride of being themselves. Just standing up on a balcony is one thing to go towards the other. So, and it also started when I was talking with a friend of mine, an artist, and I was saying, I like to go on my porch a lot, on my balcony. I'm just shy to go play my violin on the balcony. I don't want the neighbors to say like, oh, look at her, she's trying to do her own little show. But it's sad because I really wanted to go practice my violin outside, in the sun, and I like to look to people, walking in the streets. And so once she said, like in another conversation, she said, well, Catherine, why are you not going out? And I remember the conversation. There was that guy I wanted to go talk to, and I was shy. And she was like, Catherine, go out on your balcony. Do it. And I was like, yeah, okay. Like it's now an image for me, and an image that I used in those shows.
Catherine, could you tell us a little bit about exactly how how La Chasse-Balcon works, and then some of the successes and challenges you have?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. How it works, we knock on doors, we ask people if they want to lend their balcony, and some people offer their balcony via our website, and it's pretty simple. It's a show that lasts 1 hour. We're 4 artists, 4 musicians on the balcony, but we invite other musicians to come join, the repertoire. And we have 2 dancers in the public who animate a bit. We make people dance a lot, because for me that's another thing that I noticed in Louisiana, the dancing. Like, when I got back in Montreal, I was missing dancing so much. Not only that you move, and to the music, but you get to meet so many people when you dance, and then when you go back to a venue and like week after week, you get to know everyone. So just the fact to look to someone, touch that person, and it's an exercise of openness to the other. So we make people dance a lot, the 2-step, because it's easier than show square dance, and it's rapidly. And the goal is really to put people together and mix them together, and to put neighbors in contacts. I was attending like 20-25% at first, and people came by hundreds, because we really had a good, promotion plan, a press release plan that really worked well, and the word spread not only in the city, but outside the city, the province, and even worldwide. So people attend a lot the event. So this is one success, because we really see people get together and neighbors talk to each other. So, and from the balcony, it starts where people are just like really isolated with their couple or friends. And at the end of the show, everyone is, you can see it in the video, everyone is mixed together, and it's really beautiful to see. The challenge is that, well, we already have the success, it's there, but the challenge is that we don't have, it's really hard to get funds for that. First of all, it was a master project. I also did a master in communication in Montreal, and that was my project, because it was in research and creation. So first year, it's okay, we didn't have a lot of budget, but since it worked so well, the year after, I got to do it again while I was writing my thesis, so I didn't have time to go make research for funds. So when I got more time in Montreal, when I asked for funds, the answer is either, well, we don't know how to manage with that, because is it private or is it public? And it's weird, because we're asked as artists to be original, to be unique, to bring new things, to put people together, to help the community. But then there's also, that's what we're asked for. So we artists are used to go outside the conventions, and to try things, take risks. And when it works, we ask for support. And then it's hard for the people like at the city, the council, and it's hard for them to see how they can help it. They want it, but they're blocked into like the boxes that they have to work in. So how do we fund this? How would the insurances work?
I think these are really important questions, and that are going to be addressed in different ways by each of us, but something that I hope we can come back to, this question of how we fund these uncategorizable or as of yet unseen initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you so much. So next we'll have Dawn Ibey speaking to us about the Vancouver Public Library.
Yeah, and I'm going to come up here because it's just a little too comfortable on the couch. And if I sit there, we're here like way into the evening. And well, I'd like to thank and acknowledge you for hanging on here till the bitter end. I'm sure you don't want me going on more than ever. I'd also really like to acknowledge Amy and Michael for inviting me here. I'm pretty sure that when they were contemplating the list of speakers, library administrator wasn't at the top of the list. That it seems like kind of an unlikely person to be speaking at a conference around building music cities. But in fact, public libraries are a strong contributor to music, to the music ecosystem in any city, and really support a lot of the strategies that were outlined in the Mastering the Music City report that was the jumping off platform for today. So for all of you who are kind of engaged in that work of building your own strategy and trying to brand your city as a music city, I'd like to encourage you today to really reach out to your local library, if you haven't already, to find out what they're doing that will support your efforts. Because I think a lot of people have a very sort of nostalgic, kind of old-fashioned view about the public library that's based on the library of their childhood. And as the world changes, so are libraries. This is the building I work in. It's Moshe Safdie design building. It's quite beautiful. And later this September, we're opening 2 new floors. And there are no books on those new floors. They're all meeting community spaces. We'll have an 80-seat auditorium and an outdoor garden and a huge kind of feature staircase, all suitable for performances. And I don't think that's what a lot of people are thinking about when they think about the public library. So our mission is a free place for everyone to discover, create, share ideas and information. And while the phrasing will be different with different cities' libraries, the intention around that is really the same. And that's really how all public libraries operate. That they are critical drivers in creating some of the desirable social outcomes that are necessary to build social capital in a city. And I want to really acknowledge Katrin's her program here, because when you talk about building social capital, social inclusion, respect for diversity, inclusiveness, connectedness, what a great example of bringing people together and doing just that. And that's the sort of same kind of programming that we look to do in the public library. So anyway, the Mastering of Music City report identified a number of elements in terms of building a strong music city. And as I said, public libraries contribute a lot to these. So to supporting artists and musicians, to providing access to spaces and places, and creating receptive and engaged audiences. And so this is an outdoor space. Oh, okay. Oh, just by accident I got there. Yeah, so this is one of our outdoor, you can see the building in the background. This is an outdoor space in the summer where we have buskers and other performers, but free public programming for adults and children is a core business activity for the library. And programs that include musical performances or that support the creation of music or music education are part of our suite of offerings. Last year, we partnered with a number of community organizations and offered over 65 music-related programs. So, let's see. Okay, pictured in this slide, so this is the inside of the building. We have an atrium before you go inside the library. You can see there's a number of balconies here, and they are filled with guitarists. And so this is the Vertical Orchestra, 21st Century Guitar, and it was presented in partnership with the International Society for Contemporary Music as part of the ISCM World Music Days. So this performance, as I said, is just inside the building. Each day, our central library receives on average 5,500 people. And across the year, the Vancouver Public Library receives over 7 million visitors. So one of the things that we can do is build an audience. So everyone who came in during the time that they were setting up, getting ready, playing, all kind of, my office happens to kind of look down on these balconies. And everybody is just mulling around waiting to see what's going to happen, to experience the performance, and kind of take part in music in a community event that they may have come down with the intention of seeing, or that they may just have serendipitously landed on while they were coming to the library to do something else. Okay, so pictured here, other than me, this is the first person to check out a musical instrument from the Vancouver Public Library. So one of the programs that we started a couple years ago in partnership with Sun Life Financial was the Sun Life Financial Musical Instrument Lending Library. And through this partnership, we have over 250 string and percussion instruments that people can borrow, the same way that somebody would go to the library and borrow a video, a CD, or a book. And talk about making music accessible. So libraries were all about free access and providing opportunity. And the feedback that we've got from this program has really been quite outstanding. I can't afford an instrument. I used to play an instrument when I was a child, and how special was it for me to be able to go back and rediscover music. My grandson in Toronto is learning how to play a guitar, and I thought it would be really fun if I learned how to play a guitar so that when we saw each other, we could share that as a common interest. So we get a lot of people experiencing or re-experiencing music, as well as individuals who are in bands, professional musicians, who want to try something new. I thought it would be great to put a djembe drum into my musical performance. I didn't want to go out and buy one because I just want one for, this song, this track. So I borrowed one from the library. And so, through this partnership, we're really breaking down some of those barriers that some people have in terms of accessing music. So building an understanding of and respect for cultural diversity is another areas where libraries really invest heavily. So we partner with a lot of different cultural groups in terms of putting forward performances. And what these do is they not only allow for a development of music appreciation, but they also act to build intercultural understanding and to educate and foster people in terms of other cultures, other forms of creative or musical expression. And there's hosts and hosts of community groups that we partner with from all the different cultural groups that live in Vancouver, and it's really quite an honor to be able to host them. Another area where libraries are playing kind of a critical role in terms of social capital is in continuing the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Canada and the calls to action. So what this work does is it really looks at the legacy of residential schools in Canada and seeks to build capacity to reconcile with our Indigenous communities. And so providing the opportunity for cultural and music expression and exposure to that is one of the things that we're able to do in partnership with some of our local Indigenous groups. So last year we partnered with the Drum is Calling Festival and offered a very unique program that combined traditional Squamish drumming with aerial dancing, and that was received and viewed by over 350 people. So quite a great gateway into some of those discussions and talks about reconciliation. Okay, so providing an opportunity where creativity can thrive and musicians have the support they need to develop their craft is also key to a music city, and I don't think I need to tell anybody that. So as hubs of creation, libraries are increasingly building spaces that lend themselves to supporting emerging artists. In 2015, the Vancouver Public Library opened the Inspiration Lab. The Inspiration Lab is a free space dedicated to digital creativity, collaboration, and storytelling. Within the lab, there are 5 recording sound booths where people can record professional level audio and video recording. And so bookings are made online for 2-hour slots. They're free to book, and you can do as many bookings as you want. So these recording studios can be kitted out as well. So when you sign on to book a studio, there's also a list of equipment that you can check off that you want to have in the studio when you arrive. So sound mixers, video recorders, green screens, microphones, lights. There's a whole suite of things that you just check the box, then when it's your turn to use the lab, the equipment's there, and we have technicians who are available to kind of get you started and work through any problems that you have. Oh, I'm 10 minutes. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going to show the last slide. So I just want to show you this slide. So this is one of many stories So Alfredo Flores is a street musician in Vancouver, and he recorded a CD and did all the post-production work for his CD in our Inspiration Lab. So this is a project that would have cost thousands and thousands of dollars to do in a commercial studio. This artist was able to do it free at the public library. So in closing, first I apologize for going over. Be thankful I wasn't on the couch. And again, I'd like to invite you to connect in with your local library if you haven't already, because I hunch that, like us, they're doing a lot to support the music ecosystem and can really be part of a successful strategy. Thank you.
Ismael, thank you very much.
Right. Hello, everybody. I'm Ismael Guerrero, head of the Denver Housing Authority. And I also want to likewise thank Michael and Amy for the courage to have the librarian and the head of a housing authority kind of capstone the music week here in Canada. So I really appreciate that. Great. So I'm going to come at it from, likewise, in terms of the community building, public realm, the role that we've seen in Denver and the importance that arts and music particularly can have in addressing social and community justice issues, and how we've really engaged with Youth on Record, our partner that we'll hear about, Jamie Duffy and Andrea Murphy here, the executive director. And hopefully you heard some about them in the prior session. I'm going to give you some of the context of kind of how we came to partner with them, because I think it's important as musicians and artists in the community to think about how you engage with your public sector partners, community partners in the work that you can do. Let's see if I can figure this out also. Great. So just some quick context, because I know we want to go through this quickly and get to your questions. The context is that housing authorities and others in the community are really thinking more than just beyond the buildings about how we build healthy communities and healthy neighborhoods. From Housing and Urban Development Department, which funds a lot of our programs, to the Urban Land Institute, the American Institute of Architects, the foundation community, all of this trying to look at how do you create healthy neighborhoods, healthy communities, healthy people in those neighborhoods. And that was certainly our focus. And has been as we look at rebuilding neighborhoods within the city of Denver. And this is happening across the country as other housing authorities look to take the old, blighted, concentrated models of public housing and transform them into new mixed income communities. So in these pictures, these buildings have public housing units, have workforce housing, have market rate units, all mixed together in the same building. It's breaking down the stereotype of what is affordable housing, what are mixed income and communities. The other thing that we're really taking out on is going beyond traditional programming to be more social entrepreneurs and social venturers. So the Housing Authority, we have a cafe, we have a catering business, we do classes across the state through webinars. So it's a new approach of really being more entrepreneurial as we're trying to tackle these social challenges. And then we've been, as I said, going beyond just replacing housing to building neighborhoods across the city. And these are 3 that we've already completed, and the next one we're moving on to. But I'll focus on the Mariposa district, which in Denver was one of our most diverse communities coming in as a public housing site. And so we had both diversity ethnically, financially, demographically, generationally, and we wanted to make sure we were bringing back a neighborhood that fit the vision and the needs of our diverse community. And this is the framework that we came up with, which was a Healthy Community Initiative. And you can see the different components, housing just being one, but particularly around the economy, around social cohesion, around public infrastructure, all important elements that we were trying to address. And this is where music and art started becoming central to the vision of how do we address a healthy community. Just some data. I'm not an artist, I'm probably the opposite, I'm an engineer. So I come at it from data, from research, and so just some of the facts that we were working with around social cohesion and how it promotes health, visual arts and music, reducing stress and blood pressure and other chronic conditions. The need for public infrastructure, classroom space, performing arts space, because that has positive health outcomes, improves health conditions, especially in our youth, if they're not engaged, if they don't have a place to go after school. And then a healthy economy, obviously, creating opportunities for musicians, for artists, for residents to engage in the local economy And as we know in Colorado for sure, the creative industries is the 4th or 5th largest industry in the state right now. So if we're going to engage our community in the creative industries, that's a huge economic opportunity. So within the master plan, one area of health is active living guidelines. So we're intentionally building and designing the place to be healthy in a number of those elements. And these are the new Mariposa district. I don't have a before picture to show you the old public housing that was there. This is the new public housing. It's really mixed income housing. As I said, every one of the buildings has a mix of subsidized units, of workforce, income restricted, and market rate units. So it's just one community of all types. And that was by design. The other thing that came out through our community-led design process was the real interest in it being an art-centric community. And how that's been reflected in a number of different ways, from the programs that we have there in terms of the nonprofit partners, but to the commissioned artwork that's done by local artists that you see throughout the neighborhood. And then we as a housing authority, because we're already building the spaces, and this is the leverage opportunity you have, if space is already being built, new or renovated, that's a great opportunity to find ways to be collaborative and partner as musicians and artists, as nonprofits, with the developer, whether it's a public or private developer. And so what we did is we invested in spaces to expand the after-school programs there from other partners, or build a larger child care center with Catholic Charities. And then our keystone, our anchor tenant there was Youth on Record, which is a nonprofit partner that engages local musicians in the spaces in the community to come in and work with at-risk youth in the classrooms. And just to tie back, and this is the last slide, but in terms of some of the specific things that that Youth on Record was doing for us, right? Social cohesion, so that we have a great library, a great plaza there, and Youth on Record is part of their agreement with us is that they activate that plaza with community programs, block parties, musical events. So that's part of our social cohesion strategy. They're an anchor in it. We have classroom space, so in order to make sure that our kids are getting advancing academic and going to have better, healthier lives, that's a great predictor. So having classroom space, gathering spaces there. There's a professional recording studio, the youth media studio is part of it, so that we're training our kids on recording engineering, on sound production, on all of those elements that are helping them then engage into that creative industry, the recording industry. And then obviously a mixed income neighborhood, on the front where residents are walking by and can, are invited in. Just as they're walking by to be part of the experience. That's how kids find out about it. They connect with it. Families know that there's a safe place there for their kids to go to. So it's very well known throughout the neighborhood. They're one of the neighbors in the neighborhood and have been there now for, organizationally for 10 years, serving 1,000 kids a year. Jamie was just telling me that now this last year, half of the revenues, the operating income from Youth on Record went to pay local musicians as teachers, as instructors. So we're really activating the local economy there through the work that we're doing on Youth on Record. So that's happy to answer some questions and talk more about it. But Tom also.
Thank you very much, and now for our final speaker.
He went to sleep.
None of us.
Well, there's a couple things I want to say about our city of Seattle. I was really taken by the story about your connection with youth and music. KEXP moved into a public facility right here next to us. One of the reasons why we moved here was because of Vera Project, a youth-operated, a youth-empowered nonprofit arts organization. And I talk about Vera Project quite a bit because it's one of the reasons why we selected this location over 3 other locations in the city. But this is one of the few times I get to be here in St. Louis with Kate Becker, who co-founded Vera Project so many years ago. I also want to show you this picture because this is up here. This is where I proposed to my wife 31 years ago. And I also want to say that I married up. I married a librarian many years ago. Just want to let you know that. Well, KEXP is an arts organization, and we exist based on the premise that music makes lives better. And our job is to figure out how music can play a larger role in your life. And there's three beneficiaries of our work: the music lover, the artist, and Seattle's music ecosystem. And since 1972, we started at the University of Washington campus. 4 students came together to build a 10-watt radio station, which is slightly more powerful than a walkie-talkie. And through the years, really adopted a music discovery-based mission. Since up until 2 years ago, we've been in a box somewhere in the city. You probably didn't know where we were. And as we outgrew our facility, we started to think about, given how we have been producing hundreds of in-studio sessions every year, that we could become public-facing, and that the new home could be the third platform to the broadcast platform, to the online platform, and now the new home being the third platform for music discovery. I want to show you something a volunteer of ours built. It's a 3D rendering of our new facility. You can see the connection between our DJ booth and our gathering space. This is about 6,000 square feet. This is a combination of a cafe, a record store, an exhibit space, as well as a stage for public performances. This is a place where people gather. When we were doing the visioning for this facility, we knew that we needed a performance space, but we heard over and over and over again by our donors, by our listeners, is that they had an expectation we weren't really all that aware of, and that is to connect them to other fellow Traveler KEXP listeners. That was one of the reasons behind this. Let me take you over to it. The back wall here is an exhibit space. This is Lance Mercer's photography exhibit. This is where we're showing his photography from the many years, including the grunge years. You see the cafe that we have here. You see the connection between the gathering space and our DJ booth here. It was designed so people could come in this passive mode, hang out, have coffee, good Wi-Fi, but also see our work. And that was a common theme to the architecture behind this facility, was that by seeing the work at hand would hopefully inspire you to connect with music to a greater extent. You can also see our conference rooms here. We're actually, our conference rooms are public. You can actually see us work behind the glass there as well. But the most work that we do in terms of live performance is actually in this room. This is the viewing gallery into the live room. The viewing gallery holds about 80, 90 people to watch the 300 odd performances that we do every year. And through this partnership with the city of Seattle, in exchange for a favorable lease rate, we made a commitment to provide free access to these sessions for the 30-year duration of our lease. So this is a place where people can discover artists that deserve to be heard. And that's one of our key values, is to champion music that deserves to be heard. Let me take you into the live room for a second. Oops. Let's head over in there. Sneaker in the corner here. Let's head in. We did not build an auditorium. We did not build a theater. We built a session room. And this is where the artists play to each other, just like in a recording session. And we decided to mask the viewing gallery from the artists because they're nervous enough of just playing live on the air. At the same time, we wanted to provide access to our guests. I think there were a few takeaways that were really important. This really was a private-public partnership. It was critical to have the mayor's support in here. It was required to have the support of the county. It was required to have the support of the state of Washington. It was a $15 million project, and of that, about government support was about $4 million. And if any of you come to Seattle, I would love to show you these digs and show how a radio station, which traditionally is in a box somewhere, can really connect to the community. Also want to have a shout out to Melanie and the folks at WWOZ. We consider them fellow travelers and are inspired by WWOZ's mission regularly. And I was really tickled about your presentation earlier, Melanie. And hope we get more music into many more people's lives in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, that was really fascinating. I wanted to check in with you. Okay, 5 minutes or so. So we have 5 minutes that we can use for questions from the audience. Oh, you must have questions. Yes, okay. Can we get a microphone to this gentleman over here? Or you can just stand up and yell.
I can stand and Tom, I'm interested in, since KEXP's moved into the new facility, and you guys are doing so much more than what a radio station is expected to do. Is that what you're talking about?
Very good. How have you found the response from the local community? Have you had to do a lot of outreach to get folks in? And also curious about, have you had to kind of consider it as a public program and invest in kind of thinking about the visitor experience in those kinds of situations?
It was really a fearful experience because we've never done anything like this before. Like I said, we've been in a box somewhere in the city for decades. We knew that we could connect more people to more music, but we never had experience in a public venue. So we spoke to the community. Before we took, when we knew we needed to move to a new facility, we fought the urge to design, instead had a year's worth of conversation with musicians, with elected officials, with donors, with volunteers, to find out what role we ought to play. And it had to be an authentic place where music is championed, music is upheld, a place where people can gather, just be together in passive mode, but also a place for people to witness the art of musicians that should be heard. I will say very quickly that we kind of knew we'd be playing a larger civic role in the city once we became public, and that is true, actually to a greater extent than I thought. But I got to tell you that we've never been inspired by our community as much as it is now. It's a place where people can call home for Seattle's music. It's also a place where people come to mourn fallen musicians. That's something we kind of knew we'd be doing, but after Prince and after Chris Cornell, etc., it's a place to gather and for music fans to mourn together. So we've learned a lot.
Thank you. Another question in the back here.
Yeah, I have a question for Don about. Hi, I have a question for Don about the music lending library. So we're talking about instruments that could be valued upwards of thousands of dollars. What are some of the challenges with that? I'm just curious about two things in particular. Are you getting them back? What happens when you don't? And what do you do about repairs?
Okay. So first of all, we're a public library, so we have a lot of lending infrastructure. So the instruments are on our computer system the same way as books, the same way as anything else. The difference is that they don't fit on the shelf very well. So we have, you can't put a guitar on the shelf next to a book on guitars, right? It just doesn't work. So all of our instruments are held in a back room. So people have to come. They can place a hold at home. I want to check out a guitar. They get a message. The guitar is available for you. They have to come to a desk, interact with the staff. They're given the item. We have our loss rate is comparable to our loss rate with any other item, despite the value. Now, all of our instruments are the sort of, let's call it beginner range. Some are quite expensive compared to our other items, but we haven't had a problem in terms of returns. We got a call from Starbucks once. We've got one of your guitars here. Can somebody come pick it up? Which we sent somebody off to pick it up. But mostly it's working okay. And the return on investment is so strong in terms of bringing people into the library who may not have used the library before, coming, again, the feedback that I shared with you. And we're now looking at things like having ukulele clubs or getting some instruments that are anchored to our sound recording studios so that people can check off, you know, I need a sound mixer and I need a violin.
And repairs?
Oh, repairs. So we have a third-party arrangement that was part of the initial negotiations with Sun Life Financial, and so we do repairs through that. But our staff tune all the instruments before they go out.
Okay, I think we have to cut it off there. Thank you so much to everyone.